Welcome back to the BookEnds YouTube channel. I'm James McGowan.
Hi, I'm Jessica Faust.
We are literary agents who have taken our popular blog to YouTube to discuss all things publishing. And a couple of weeks ago, well, I don't know when it's being posted, but at some point in the near past, we did a video. We did a video on you know what? I don't even know anymore. We did another video on genre. Madison told me we should do this one because it's gonna dovetail nicely. All right.
Because Madison knows. We
Thank
do
you,
whatever
Madison.
Madison says.
That's why we have a social media manager.
Yeah.
So today we're doing a video. We're going to talk a little bit on we're just going to define genre for you.
Yeah, and we actually did a blog post on this as well. So we're throwing this in all spots. I'm sure I'll do an Instagram and a TikTok. We have TikTok. Do you all know we have TikTok? We have TikTok.
Oh, yeah, we're on TikTok. Well, by we, I mean Jessica's on TikTok.
And Madison.
Oh, and Madison, that's true. Anyway, one way or another, you're going to get this message from us via the blog, the TikTok, or our YouTube channel. But we wanted to talk a little bit about, we're always talking about genre, making sure you get it right. We want to do our best to explain what that means from our side of the desk.
And yeah, we get a lot of questions about what does upmarket mean? How do you define a suspense versus a thriller and things like that? And so we're going to do some of that, and then we're not.
Thanks for watching this long, folks. I really appreciate the undying support, because this is a real rocky one. And you know what? I hope that at some point, whatever we say in this video is by any means useful. But
I'm sorry, what did you just say?
Just like, this is a mess.
Okay, so genre.
Okay, so genre is it's a fluid descriptor, right? It's not something that ever really has, like, I feel like a firm meaning. And you mentioned this before we even started recording, that when we started out in our jobs in the industry in general, we were never given a list that says, this is what romance is, this is what mystery is. It's just not something that happens. We come to understand genre by consuming genre. And that's both in books, movies, TVs, music, everything.
Yeah, I think as with a lot of things throughout this process, authors want a really clear picture of, if I do exactly this, it will be this, and then eventually I will get published. But there are certain, when it comes to, well, okay, so genre is, when we think of genre, we think of a few major categories, and I'm not going to name them all. I'm just going to name what popped at the top of my head: mystery, romance, science fiction, fantasy, and others, suspense, thriller, women's fiction. YA, middle grade, picture book are not genre in my mind. Those are age groupings. There's adult, there's YA, there's middle grade. Those are not considered genres. Those are the age category we're targeting.
Pro tip: if you can say something before genre, it's probably an age thing. So like picture book, fantasy, it's an age thing. Middle grade, horror, it's an age thing. So middle grade itself is not a genre. And if you are going to get more specific with a genre, then it is probably an age clarifier.
Right. You can find mystery, romance, blah, 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 the others in all of the age categories, essentially. So those are what we think of when we think of genre. I feel like I've been asked this question the entirety of my career, especially when it comes to suspense and thriller. How do you define it? And I've always felt like I was supposed to have an answer and didn't know how to come up with one. And as I was putting my blog post together for this, I realized that, you know what, it's not my job to come up with one, because there isn't really a way to define it. I can tell you what a mystery is, but the truth is, it's your job to understand the genre. In the same way, we didn't enter this job and somebody said, here's a list of genres. Through our reading, we came to understand what the genres were.
That's kind of the beauty of it too, right? Like if every genre had specific things that have to happen in every single book that made it a mystery, for instance, it'd be boring. So a mystery has a crime at the center, and then someone tries to solve it. It's a little more general and nebulous, and that's like the point of it, right? Romance is two people, typically, start to fall in love, there's a happy ending at the end. That's what makes it a romance. So
Yep. But we've even seen people play with those.
well, I
We've
was just
even
gonna
seen
say, yeah,
romances without happily ever
that's the
after.
beauty of it too, right?
Yeah.
That's what makes books stand out when they start to take those expectations of a genre and push the envelope and play with it a bit and do things in a new and exciting way. That is why genre is never something that's going to be so regimented that you have to stick to it because that's not fun. Like
No.
it's not how we make good art, right? So I think that the point of a genre is a marketing tool. It's where in the bookstore, how is your publisher, where is it being marketed and how?
Who's the audience? If
Exactly.
you're writing suspense and you're not sure if your book is a suspense or a thriller, honestly, I think the two can be used interchangeably. Most
Yeah.
agents who represent suspense also represent thriller, and vice versa, the same with the publishers. And I have heard people use those words interchangeably about the same book. So I wouldn't get
Yeah,
too hung up on it.
I couldn't tell you the difference.
But if you're looking at your book and you're going, well, I don't know what genre it is, it has elements of everything, then in my mind, you're not reading enough. And you're not reading enough across the board. If you decided you're writing a mystery, but somehow somebody told you your book is a romance and now you've decided it's a romance, you better not make that decision until you've sat down and read a bunch of romances.
I was gonna say, we very rarely have an instance where we read something, we're like, what did we just read? Like I have no idea how I would even pitch that.
No,
It's a muscle, it's a gut instinct that we've developed
you
over
just
time
know.
doing our job. We know. Yeah, we read something and we're like, that is perfect there, or this would be perfect for this person because we have spent so much time immersed in the marketplace, both with books that are publishing and editors with like tastes and wish lists and all of that, but we have developed the muscle that can almost instinctively tell us this is how I would classify that book. And I think every author can get to that point as well.
I think every author's there. To be honest, I think if you're really thrown, you're overthinking it. Every single one of you knows a mystery when you read a mystery. You know a suspense when you read a suspense. You know a romance when you read a romance. You know what the genres are. That's not really your concern. You're overthinking your book. And the truth is, if you're looking at your book and going, well, there's elements of everything, I can't decide, then you need to really buckle down and figure out where it belongs, or if you need to fix the book because it's not belonging
A
anywhere.
good example of this too, I always I give my mom a ton of books from BookEnds. I always pass books along to her. And sometimes she'll be like, "Is this a thriller?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it is." She's like, "No, I can't. I'm too scared to do that. Like, I won't do it." And over time, I've given her so many of the thrillers that we've worked on. And she's like, "Is this a thriller?" And it completely changed because she always thought that a thriller was something that would terrify her. And I'm like, "That's
Right.
horror." And a
Right.
thriller is a little more about like the suspense and getting to the end of things. And she has trained that muscle to know what a thriller is, to know that she likes thrillers,
Right.
but she's been able to parse through what makes something a thriller. And it was just a matter of exposure and reading and learning.
Yeah.
And like you said, most people who write are by nature, by design readers. So
Mhm.
you've probably already developed this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think so. I actually think even though we're defining genre, genre tends not to be as much of the struggle as what I'm going to call the three major fiction categories. And upmarket fiction is in there. And I know because a lot of you are sitting there, well, you didn't mention upmarket. You didn't mention upmarket because I don't think of upmarket as a genre. I
Right.
think of it as a category. So the three categories I think of in fiction are commercial, literary, and upmarket. And all of those can have a genre, except for maybe no, literary can too. All of those can have a genre within them. You can have a literary fantasy. You
Right.
can have an upmarket thriller. And then I think the way we typically think of genre as standalone or commercial. If we just call it a mystery and we just call it a romance and we're not adding the literary or upmarket category to it, it's commercial.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I think that those are usually less concerned with um less concerned with the actual genre conventions and more concerned with the writing, the way that we're presenting the story.
Yeah. Yeah, so literary fiction is definitely more about the writing and the plot. I mean, obviously you have to have a plot, you have to have good characters, but when marketing the book, we're focusing more on beautiful writing. That's what people are looking for in literary fiction. We're not necessarily always buying the book because it has a hooky plot.
Yeah, those are the books that are like word potential and all of that kind of
Yes.
stuff.
Yes.
And then
But
commercial fiction, like you
commercial,
said.
what?
Go ahead.
I was going to say commercial fiction is really about a hooky, a hooky. It has to have a hook. We're selling that romance based on what makes this romance different from all the other romances. We're doing the same with the suspense. What in one sentence makes this stand out and sell to the reader?
Yeah.
That's the hook we want. And I think commercial fiction, and I hate having this conversation of literary versus commercial or upmarket, because I always feel like it leaves this thought that they're not as well written, but I disagree with that. I think of literary as more flowery, which is a terrible word, but I think commercial and upmarket fiction are just as well written, but it's more of a different writing style. Does that make sense? Because I don't want to discredit it, because I feel like that's sort of what it can easily go to, where people can hear it and think, well, I'm not as good of a writer, so I'm writing this. And I don't think that's the truth.
Well, the way I always try to explain it, that with commercial fiction, it's very concerned, like you said, with the beats of what the readers are expecting, with the hook, with the genre, with the conventions. Literary fiction is probably a little less plot focused and a little less super fast paced
Yes.
than commercial. And I think a lot of that is probably because of the writing and the caliber of language that literary fiction writers use that commercial fiction writers don't always use. The way I explain it to some clients is, commercial fiction, we're pitching those kinds of books to voracious mystery readers, right?
Yes.
Those are the people that are actively reading this genre, that love that genre, and that's who your book is for, which is totally fine. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
Literary fiction is the books that are a bit more general, right? And that do maybe play with genre a bit and are really focused on their writing and maybe are less plot focused. So I think,
well, I love what you said about language. I think that was a key word in there. I think literary fiction plays with language more than commercial or upmarket necessarily does.
Right. So, a good example of this is like, if you were thinking in mysteries, Tana French is more of a literary mystery writer. She's very concerned with the language, right? She writes beautiful sentences, and it is a little longer winded. It's very character driven. Whereas if you pick, I think of like Alice Feeney, right? Like that's a very commercial kind of thriller mystery kind of book.
Yep.
And then upmarket, I say it's like the brainchild of both of them. It's right there in the middle. It's also sometimes called book club fiction. It's books that are starting conversations, but have those hooks, those fast-paced plots, right? Like they're very concerned with reaching both markets, really, and combining the best of both worlds, where they're a bit more concerned with the language, but they're also very much hitting hooks and genre conventions and plot points and things like that. I always try to say, like Reese would pick it, I would call it upmarket, right? Like Reese is very upmarkety.
She hasn't always picked up market. She has picked more commercial books. She tends not towards the literary though.
Right. So so we hope that's helpful, at least for breaking those three down. And again, I think a lot of that too comes with writing. I mean, with reading. When you read more, you do tend to like mentally group books into one of these three categories.
And what I would say is, you don't have to get it perfect. I have had plenty of people pitch me a literary book that I see and editors see as more upmarket. I've sold books that authors think of as more commercial into an upmarket. So things can float around depending on me, depending on the editor, and depending on the publisher and what they publish.
Yeah, I was gonna say sometimes it's a bit aspirational too, right? Like I think that if you pitch something as upmarket, it might just be how we would revise it together too. That would even take it further into upmarket, or same for literary. So I think that it's like, I don't know, it's really a tricky thing to like parse down and make clarifications for, but it really just does depend.
And I think you need to know your genre, right? You can't be pitching a mystery that's clearly a romance. Like that's about pitching the right editor too, or the right agent. But if you get it wrong, you're not going to get rejected because your genre wasn't spot on. And
New Jersey.
I have definitely pitched books as one thing that sold and the publisher published it as something else. Nobody cared. You know, once they've read the book and liked it, that's when they start to care where it belongs.
Yeah.
But they don't really care what you say. At that point, it's how they think they can sell it
And
and
how
where
it's
it
gonna
belongs.
fit in there.
Yeah. So, you know, you could have a literary house and an upmarket house and a commercial house all bid on the same book, but have different visions for how to publish it.
Yeah. It doesn't always matter of like it doesn't have to be perfect, but it just has to get that point across.
Yeah, and you have to know. You have to know that generally you're in the right range, and you can't pick them all. You can't tell me it's literary fiction with commercial appeal because it has romance and mystery. I do not want that book.
But there's also kind of a term for that, isn't it? If it's literary with commercial appeal,
Well,
wouldn't
it's
it kind of be
upmarket.
upmarket?
Right. Yes, it could be,
Yeah.
but don't try to make it all.
No.
Nothing fit. No, there's no one's
There's no
meant to
such
be all.
thing.
Yeah.
Even like a romance with paranormal and a murder in it. It's going on one of those 3 shelves in a bookstore.
Yeah.
I will tell you, with the murder in it, it's probably not a romance.
No, it could be romantic suspense.
Oh, true. But feel like that's a different shelf though than
It's a
like
different shelf. It's a
yeah.
romance shelf, not a mystery shelf.
Yep. Okay.
There we go.
Anyway, we hope this was helpful. I think we broke down something that probably troubles a lot of people. So we hope it was helpful in understanding the books that you're reading and the books that you're writing. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you back here next time.
Bye.